Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Paul Zeidman. I'm very excited today to be talking to my guest. She is a mentor, a teacher, an author. She's a journalist, and she's quite international too, but I will let her go into all the details about that one. Afarin Bellisario, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this discussion because I don't think I've ever had someone who started off in another country and then worked their way to America, and it factors into their writing. But again, we'll get to that in just a minute. But for regular viewers and listeners of the show, we like to start things off by talking about anything we may have read or watched lately, whether we liked it or we hated it or we're just totally indifferent to it. Doesn't matter. I will go first to give Afarin a little time to collect her thoughts. Maybe think, what was I watched last weekend? I can't remember. Oh, my mind's going blank. Happens to everybody. Since the last time I recorded, it was Star Wars Day, so I went to see Star Wars in the theater. I've seen it a zillion times. Still enjoy it a lot. And then recently, a little more recently, I watched a local art house theater. They were showing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Seen that a zillion times. Still fun to see. And then I also saw The Fall Guy, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit. It's a little dragged a little bit in parts, but for the most part, it's a little fun. I don't understand why it's not doing as well as it should be with the box office. And people are like, "Oh, it's a huge bomb." But it's a great movie. I just have a feeling people are just waiting for it to get to streaming, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, why didn't anybody tell me it was this good?" And people will say, "We did tell you that. You just weren't listening." So that's pretty much it for me. Fareed, how about you? Anything new on the reading or the
So,
viewing queue?
yeah, first of all, let me tell you that I also enjoyed Fall Guy. I'm a
Oh, good.
movie person, so I go to movies a lot, and it's a habit of mine. I like to write about movies as well. I think this is wonderful, but I thought that it's pure fun. It wasn't overly one way or the other. Had a nice story to follow. Yes, parts of it was not believable, but it was a good old-fashioned movie. And I enjoyed it as well. I like Ryan Gosling and I like Emily Blunt. I've seen them. I've seen Emily in well, nowadays it's Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, she
See each
she is
of
quite a
them.
versatile actress, as
Very
is
good.
Mr. Gosling.
And yes, and then both of them did a great job. The other thing, I'm just watching this Spanish kind of soap opera called Under Suspicion.
Okay.
And I kind of enjoy it because I'm trying to learn Spanish and it has the subtitles, so I can kind of not look and then look, not look. So I enjoyed that. Um, the book that I read recently was The Coming Wave, and it's uh, I think it's Mustafa Soleiman, right? He's the co-founder of DeepMind, and that's pretty scary.
Hmm.
It's a nonfiction, well written, and again, as I said, it kind of tells us about dangers of AI taking over and
Oh, okay.
deciding we are not needed anymore.
Oh
So,
man.
so that's kind of it's sobering in some sense because I'm a technologist. I come from the technology background. Most of my life, I kind of like, these things, but it's sobering to think what it can do if it's used in the wrong way, so to
Hmm.
speak, and if it doesn't have the human judgment. So
Okay, and
with
I'm sorry.
that,
What, and what? I'm sorry. What's the name of the book again?
a coming wave. And he talks about the wave of technology, that a number of technologies that are coming, and including artificial intelligence and synthetic biology, which is
Hmm.
creating life in the lab. And unfortunately, I don't know, but for better or worse, they are both coming to become real. And
Hmm.
it's time for us to sober up and deal with it.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Wow. Yeah. That I was going to say, especially the AI topic, that is very timely. So it'd be interesting to hear like another take on it because there's so many different opinions about it, and
right.
especially in terms of the creative field, because I've seen so many arguments online about yeah, it's a tool. No, it's going to take over our jobs, and then you're depriving artists and creatives of their abilities, and you're just going for an easy way out. So it's interesting to see like it's how extensive the discussion about this spreads.
Yes, and I think that, we have to deal with it in a very rational and with wisdom. I mean, I always say that human being, well, not all of us are wise all the time, but we got to become more wise as we deal with this. In reality, they're tools, but they're extremely powerful tools. And I compare them to a nuclear bomb. I actually wrote a short blog after I saw Oppenheimer and compared the two. The difference is that from the beginning, human beings started seeing the danger. So people dealt with it with treaties, and you know they tried to deal with it in a legal and humanitarian way. But with AI, we don't even have that luxury because it's coming. Some of it is going to be good, as nuclear is. I mean, nuclear medicine, for example, is a very powerful tool. Nuclear power plants could be very good, but it also has a dark side to it.
Hmm.
And with the AI, it's the same thing. And the danger of AI and also synthetic biology. And again, Mr. Suleiman brings both of them up here in his book. Is that it's being used either casually by people that don't understand what they're doing, or used in a malicious way. I mean, somebody really, and I always say that, and you can compare it with a knife. The knife, can kill or can make you food or be very useful tool. The same thing with all of these, except that knife at worst can kill a couple of people, and AI and synthetic biology can have the potential of destroying human life on Earth. But what we have to, again, human beings. I'm still optimistic. I think we have dealt with a lot of problems in the history. We have to deal with this one as well, and so it's a sobering thought that should make us more united, not divided. And unfortunately, that's another thing that I am very concerned about, is the divisions and polarizations that we're seeing in America today, and
Hmm.
perhaps the rest of the world as well. So,
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and your background.
sure.
So I know we can start establish that you grew up in Tehran, Iran,
Yes.
and then your family left in, I believe, 1974.
Yeah, I left in
Oh,
74.
you
My
left in
parents
74. Okay.
didn't leave until end of 78, just before the revolution. I mean, the revolution was happening.
Developing.
Yes,
Right.
but they left then, and of course, none of us returned. Yeah, so
Right. Right. So I want to establish so that part of your growing up, it said you started writing for magazines and journals at the age of
yes,
14. Now, were you
yes.
the type you were always into writing of some sort? Now, did you always want to be a journalist?
Oh, yes. I always wanted to be a writer. And my first magazine was actually something that totally was misinformation, but I made a little magazine. I was like 6 and I didn't understand anything. But I did that, but I made a little, magazine, all handwritten. And I loved books. I devoured books, especially in the summer, and all kinds. I read, I don't know, Victor Hugo, and I read the Alexander Dumas, but I also read a lot of junkier novels, So it wasn't all great novelists,
It wasn't all classic literature.
classic literature was part of it, but
Hmm.
I also a lot of, so I read anything that came my way. Then I started writing, and and if I was left on my own devices, I probably would have at least been half of, like would do something else and would write, because making a living as a writer, if you think it's hard here in America, it was even harder in Iran, because you had to deal with all the problems that writers are confronting within this country, the channels, where to write, magazines, things like that, but also censorship.
Hmm.
I was very lucky enough that, I had really, I encountered really good editors, and my writing was published very early on. I used to have my own little section of the women's magazine. I wrote for literally magazines, uh, but it's kind of hard. Was hard in Iran because of the censorship of the Shah. So you had to have internal censors. I remember that when I worked for a literally magazine, everything had to be cleared internally, because otherwise you had problems. And people would write things, uh, metaphors and that kind of thing, so to get around. But it's still hard to make a living. And I was very fortunate to also be a mathematician. I was very good in math, and so I said, okay, well, I'm going to make my living out of something else, like an engineering. My uncles were engineers, so I can become an engineer. But it's a tradition in Iran, actually, that many people who have some other job, they also write on the side. I mean, some of the best works of literature, especially contemporary literature, came out of people who had another job, a day job and a night job. Um, so that was always a dream. But when I came to United States, obviously writing writing for an American or an English native speaker is hard, and I didn't think that they would want another one coming from another country quite yet. And as I said, for better or worse, fortunate or unfortunate, I had another venue. I went to MIT. I had a PhD. So that was a more marketable skill, if you will, especially for someone coming from Iran, which was the great Satan at that point.
Mhm.
America was great Satan in Iran, but obviously people here also saw every night they went. I think Tom Brokaw, all three of the
Sure.
networks had this clock, 410 days, and
Hmm.
uh, if a event like that can change the presidency of the United States, obviously it can affect lives of people like myself very much so. Uh, so I, ended up in this country. Not bad, good things, lots of good things, good people. But when I had a chance at some point in my life, I just decided to take that chance and say, okay, I'm going to write now.
Was it a real challenge to, I guess, adapt to, I guess, what would be considered the American way of writing? I mean, you had the censorship in Iran, but you also said you had fantastic editors. Now, were you able to, I guess, adapt yourself and your writing quickly, or was it kind of a gradual thing, or did you have editors say, okay, this is how we do it, or this, you might want to reconsider or take a different approach, that sort of thing?
So there are two parts to this answer to this question. I have a whole bunch of papers that I wrote for business magazines, I wrote cases for Harvard Business School. So I can adapt my style to different things, but I had never written fiction in English.
Hmm.
So the first version of my book had a good story, because I'm a storyteller, I'm a marketing person. I can tell you stories about this and that and the other, but they're not necessarily, the characters weren't filled. So a lot of that, obviously I did my best, but a lot of that was seat of the pants kind of thing. Okay, characters in Dostoevsky are characters in Hemingway. So not much difference, but of course writing and things like that. So what I did, because I took writing seriously, I hired one. There was one lady first, and then another lady, and the first lady didn't really have time, so the second lady worked with me, and we worked. You know, she is both my mentor and my editor. So we went through every single part of the books because I really wanted the book to be something that I am proud of. I don't know whether it's going to sell 100 copies or 1,000 or 1,000,000, but I want, when I'm dead, I want people to read it still. I want my children to be proud of it. And so I just really wanted to be read, you know, the writing to be well. I didn't want it to be, you know, these days, because there's it's the barrier to entry to publishing is very low, as you know. People just publish books, and some of them are very badly written. Some of them have nothing, you know, to offer. So I was very careful. I had beta readers, my beta readers, friends and family, and you know, so a lot of them authors themselves, and they said it's a good story. You know, I did a lot of research in terms of the history behind everything. So I took it serious. It's not a faint of heart, in my opinion. You just have to be serious about it. It's not a hobby. So anybody who thinks that can make a few bucks and there, I don't think it's realistic.
Oh, okay,
With
so
that, I'm here.
okay, so yeah, so let us talk
Huh.
about your book, which you were just showing us, and for those who are just listening, it is a novel,
Okay.
Silenced Whispers. So give us a little bit of background
Yes.
about it, like what is it about, and how did you come up with the idea for the story?
Okay. So of course I am a, you know, I'm a technologist, and as I said, as I mature, I think what technology does in societies. How do we change as people when we are confronted with technology? So, and of course, the question of Iran is always in the mind of diaspora. What I kind of thought about it is that Iran was really a very backward country at the at the beginning of the 19th century. You know, there was no good roads, there was no trains, there was nothing. Then from the middle of 19th century, Iran started modernizing, you know, getting technology from the West, entrepreneurship, send students abroad. But really, there's 20 years, the first 20 years of World War One, around World War One, the first 20 years of 20th century, that was really where Iran made a huge leapfrog, if you will. There was a very fast introduction of not only technology but also Western ideas. Many of the Western ideas were not particularly alien, at least to the intellectuals, but for the majority of people, the idea of democracy, human rights, the idea of especially women's rights, and these were not part of everyday culture. So, and this new intellectuals who came from France, many of them, some were educated in Russia, they all brought with them this new ideas and and so there was this 20 years, a lot of things changed, you know, including, and first we had an absolute monarchy, then there was constitutional revolution, then we had a parliament, and then there was lots of fighting about this parliament. The Shah closed it. So this was a very tumultuous time, and it ended with the rise of Pahlavi regime and the rise of Reza Shah. I thought that that is a really good time to look at this transition, because it was 20 years is not a long time in the life of a country that's I don't know, 5,000 years old. So that 20 years was very pivotal. So I thought that that's a good time. If I want to know how things change and how this technology, how bringing this modernization changed Iran, I want to look at that. And then what happened to people, people in Iran who were confronted with these changes, to tradition. Now we don't have tradition. Now we have all this electric lights and things that sounds like magic, there's a box that can play music, and it's, I mean, for people, that's magic. That's pure magic. So I wanted to imagine what would happen and to people as they go about that. And that's how I put the story in that time period. Couple of things that happened that I had a little bit of an understanding about is that my grandfather, my one side of my paternal grandfather, was originally from, of course, part of Azerbaijan, which is now Republic of Azerbaijan, which he came to Tehran, and he actually grew up in Istanbul and Odessa, and he had been traveled everywhere, and he loved to have people coming over, and so a lot of people would come over, tell stories about past, about future. My grandfather also told me about how how he would walk around the Bosphorus and this and that and the other. So, and then the other side of my family, my great grandfather, as I say in the book, is Russian. So there's a lot of stories that I heard. There's a lot of characters that I met, and having been a journalist in Iran, I knew a little bit about the culture and the people and what's good and what's bad and whatever. So all of these things gave me a good beginning, so to speak. And as I said, the skeleton of the story of Gohar and how she came about from the beginning to the end was sort of written pretty quickly, but then the characters and the atmosphere and the rest of them, we kind of build on that skeleton. And again, my editor and mentor, her name is Ellie Rubin, if anybody is interested. But she was very good to me. I mean, and it was not sort of, I mean, for somebody who had been around other things, I didn't need a teacher, so to speak. I didn't want to take a course, but the two of us will discuss. And one of the things that she told me is that, okay, so think about, in forming this character, think about yourself, and that was really very liberating because a lot of things came out of my own analysis of what I would do, how
Hmm.
I would feel, how I would be in that if I was going through that changes. So that's how the book came to be.
Okay,
But
so I wanted to ask, so it's not autobiographical, but it sounds like a lot of your experiences growing up until you left probably had a big influence on the story. And I'm also guessing that some of the experiences that you write about, they may have happened to other people or people you actually know or things you've heard. So what was the research part of this all about? I mean, was it all about this, that did you it's I guess it's a leading up to about like putting the story together. So
sure.
did you just, okay, this is what I want it to be about, and did you have to kind of lay things out, or was it just kind of like, oh, I'm going to take this from here, and this my friend of mine, this happened to her, and I can, just it's kind of like just putting all the pieces together. What was the process like that for you? And I guess where did a lot of the material come from?
Okay, so the research is actually all the historical events that I tell about in the sport, not what happened to the individuals, but what happened in Tehran and Iran is to the best of my knowledge is all research, and to do research, I coming from a background, as a scientific background, I don't know, I looked at a lot of good stuff comes out of British archives because they were there, they saw everything, they wrote everything. And I went back and looked some of them on the web, some of them, wrote to them and they sent me, they're all declassified. So there's nothing classified about them. But they're also reading of the people who wrote history at that time, or magazines and newspapers. So a lot of research, and I was very lucky. I'm still affiliated with MIT, so I took advantage of that affiliation to look at not only their library, but through them, libraries of Harvard and other, universities with better historical, records than MIT. But, sort of, so the historical basis was set in some sense. And what I did was that uh, I took advantage of the fact that there's a lot of adventures going on.
Mhm.
And so I kind of blended in. And that was the hardest part, because you have this historical thing, and then you have a story that you want people to read and enjoy. So it's kind of, that was the part of the, that was that was probably one of the most difficult parts of this project, was making so that the plot has ups and downs in the same way as any story, and any purely fictional story has ups and downs, but it kind of um, dovetail, or it kind of takes advantage of the um, well, of the historical events that happened in Iran. Now, luckily for a writer, there was no shortage of stuff that happened. So I could sort of choose what I wanted. And I kind of like, the characters are based on people that I know, that I have known. It's not based on any real characters, but I took traits from people that I have known. And that. So that was kind of like taking advantage of my background.
Okay, so it sounds like you had a lot of material to work with. Did you end up having more than you needed? Like, did you have like maybe a storyline or a subplot and realize, this isn't going anywhere. I can just cut it, or oh, this isn't working with the main story, and where you were just did you have like, oh, if I kept everything in, this is going to be a 500-page book, and then you just cut like, oh, here's like 150 pages gone like that.
Well, first I wrote actually a 500 pages novel, but then I realized that nobody reads that anymore. So first I cut it in half. So there's a sequel to the
Okay.
book that I left it to be, and then even from this, the book is, I don't know, like about 100,000 words, which is what, or so we did cut, and so I did kill some of my children to make it readable. And also, hey, is this as you said, what does subplot do to the overall story? Does that, and again, my teacher was pretty strict with me. He says, okay, so what does this do? I mean, okay, it's this guy goes, I don't know, buys I don't X, or drinks Y, or whatever. Does it advance the story? Does it advance the characters? So we had that discussions, and that took a long time, because
Hmm.
you deal with a lot of authors, and authors uh, are not happy to kill their subplots.
That's true. That's true. I was just about to ask. Oh, so okay, so you finished the draft,
Yes.
and so were you getting feedback from not just your editor, but did you have beta readers, or did you say, oh wait, before I send it out, I want to do like one more pass on it and do like a little cleanup? And I guess the big question is, what was the response from not just your editor, but also from the beta readers?
Okay, so from the beginning, when I first finished the story, I gave it to friends to read, because my first impression was that, hey, it's just a story.
Hmm.
And then I got a lot of great responses. A friend of mine, she's a lawyer. She said, oh, you gotta publish this thing. So there was a lot of enthusiasm. My beta readers were really very, very positive about the story and the plot, and that was like I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So
Okay.
so then if I didn't have that encouragement, I wouldn't even have hired an editor. I would have just put it in the closet, or I don't know, whatever, and not dealt with it. But I had over 60 or 70 beta readers.
Oof.
And so I am was pretty confident that things were getting better. So then at some point, I did. And then at some other point, you decide that this is good enough. And I went to, writers conference digest in New York with a query. They have this agent,
Hmm.
I don't know, Mark, whatever they call it. And I spoke with 7 agents, and 6 of them requested like a longer manuscript. So I said, fine. So this is the August of 2019. I came home, and now I was, motivated. So I hired an editor, as I said, and the two of us started, hashing through to have 50 good pages or whatever. And then COVID happened.
Mm.
So by the time I started sending this to the agent, none of them were even working. I don't know. I mean, I didn't even get a rejection letter.
Oh, just radio
So
silence.
yes, and then total silence, and it was really soul crushing. So
No, well, yeah, that means you're a true writer then.
yes.
So actually, I want to go back real quick. So you said you sent it to like 60 or 70 beta readers. Did anyone have any comments that you were able to really implement and utilize in the next draft or a rewrite or a polish of the book?
Yes, one of them was this blending thing. I mean, when you get feedbacks on anything, on any product, you get some feedback that comes out of almost every reader. So
Hmm.
so the first criticism was that this non I mean the history was like clumps in it. So I had to, and that took a long time for as we go through the book, to make the history as part of the story, which is what I wanted to do. So that was something that came out of that. People were indulgent with me about the fact that I'm not a native speaker of the English. My style wasn't polished then. I think since then it has become very polished and much more polished, and so but that was the biggest thing that came out of that first set of beta readers. And so I had the first set, and then after during COVID time and with my editor and everything else, but we had the book in a better shape, then we had more people. And yes, one of the things that I have learned throughout my life, and not as a writer, but as anything else, is that every criticism, even our first response to a criticism is being defensive. Oh
Hmm.
no, you didn't read it well. I have everything there. But then I started, thinking, okay, if this point is missed by this reader who is a friend of mine and who has nothing against me, then it must be, also missed by somebody else who writes. So all of the criticisms that came to me, I took it seriously, and I tried to respond to it. Not respond to that person, but
Sure.
I tried to, soften the problem or solve the problem.
Oh,
So yeah,
that is one thing I wanted to ask you. So from all this feedback that you were getting, were you seeing maybe a particular note or a comment that more than one person or several people were saying, and you said, well, if this many people are saying that, then it is definitely something I have to address.
absolutely, absolutely. As I said, I mean, I take every criticisms from people that I know have no ulterior motive
Hmm.
seriously, because again, maybe you didn't read it properly. Maybe my warning wasn't clear. But so I try to respond to that and think about it. But again, the first criticism that came out was very much consistent about the blending um, of the history and the story. And I'm happy to say that most of the readers of the last version didn't think that was the problem. So
Hmm.
so we have made progress.
Well, that's what, yeah, I've seen that a lot, is that many times that you know, because you are the writer, so you know the material backwards and forwards. It is ingrained into your head. So for you to someone to say, "I'm not really sure I understand what's happening," yes, as you said, you get defensive and your automatic response is, "How can you not see that?" But you also have to realize that they're looking with fresh eyes; they've never seen this before. Whereas you, as the writer, you've read it who knows how many times or rewritten it how many times. So it's great that your readers were so helpful and it was really a benefit for you. So let's move on to okay, so lockdown started. Where is that when you did a lot of like a big chunk of the rewriting, or was it kind of it was already set, but like now that you're stuck at home, are you able to just kind of like, oh, I can, work, I can work so much more on the book now?
No, I mean, I wanted to work on it, but it was a good situation because you couldn't do anything else. I couldn't go out and do any consulting. Schools were closed, so I couldn't do any mentoring. So it was, I took I took advantage of that time, and by then my research was done. And just going back to the criticisms, the one other thing that I did is that in the first version of the book, I put too much history in it, and
Hmm.
most people didn't care. I mean, they couldn't care. I mean, it was like, okay, the country, the big picture is country is changing. It's being under the turmoil. Now, how does this character goes about and lives her life or not, and how does that change her, and how so that's what's important to people. People want to have a character to care for or not care for. But I didn't, as the researcher, didn't understand that, or maybe I understood it in a intellectual level, but
Hmm.
I didn't understand it on a bottom level. But yeah, COVID was a good time to do that. I mean, as a tragedy, I mean, it was a tragedy. It was terrible for most people, especially for young people. But for me, yeah, I mean, I could deal with that.
Okay, so yeah, let's actually touch real quick on the about the too much history part of it.
Yes,
Is
yes,
that because, as you said, you felt that the having the details in the story were necessary, but it sounds like the readers were kind of like, yeah, that's helpful and that's good to know, but I'm more interested in what happens to these characters rather than what's going on around them while they're living their lives and going through these things.
yes. I think that was the gist of it. That I went from being very research oriented, history oriented. I told the story to tell the history, but in fact, I should tell the story to tell the history. So
So you
making
so you kind of like use the history as an embellishment for the story.
background. Yes,
Oh,
I mean
background. Okay.
background, and the reality is that we also right now are going to a very rapid transition in this country. Things that 20 years ago were novel and magic,
Hmm.
it's yesterday's news. And so so that's that. There's a lot of parallelism. It's just that time frame. Looking at the past is always easier because we have something to look backward from. And so a lot of changes I try to melt it in the background of people who are more traditionalists, maybe less traditional, and that kind of thing. So, and I think I shouldn't say so. I should be humble. But yeah, I think that came out good, and I think that beta readers, the ones, I mean, some of the friends, as I said, many of them are authors themselves or critics,
Hmm.
in their own right, writing teachers and things like that, just agreed with me. They felt that the story was well told, and so that was the intent, and I'm happy to have achieved that. So
That's wonderful. So is the book now, is it released?
if the book is released, it's for sale on Amazon, please, and Barnes and Nobles.
Anywhere
I
fine books are sold.
Yes, and all the fine books. So yes.
Oh, so I have to ask, so what is the response been so far? And then, and another big question is, So how has the reaction been, I guess, from people not familiar with, I guess, Iranian culture and history?
Reaction has been very good, obviously for unknown author, sort of debut author like myself, it's always hard to break in above the noise. But speaking with people like yourself, going on podcasts, I was on Voice of America this morning for better or worse, but trying to use whatever platform I have to just say, read it. You don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, not everybody on earth is gonna like it, but people who read it enjoy it. They come back to me, and hopefully we will have more of a grassroots reviews or some good reviews already that we put out. But we're getting good reaction from people who read it. Um, I'm proud to say that there's a book club affiliated with women at MIT, and they have decided to read this for
Oh,
their
wow.
book. So, hey, this is a good for book clubs. I think it's great for book clubs because it is it's a fun book to read, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of issues that people can discuss because that's what you want book clubs to do. And so I highly recommend it. Of course, I'm the writer, so
Well, of course.
I can't say bad things about, but no, I mean the thing about me is that I'm a very straightforward person. I always say uh, good things about people and also things that I didn't find particularly great. So, but I think that this is a good book, and
Okay. And it also sounds like that it's because you were focusing more on the story and not as much on the history. So that makes it a little more accessible to a more general or more widespread audience, that people who don't know anything about Iranian culture or history, they'll be able to read this and say, oh, I totally get where these characters are coming from, or I can totally relate to that. Was that something that you were really striving for as you were developing the story?
yes, I was. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it accessible. And I had one beta reader who said she read it in the subway, in a commute. So I wanted it to be a story that you enjoy. I want people to take this to the beach. I really want that because I think the story, first and foremost, has to be accessible to
Mhm.
people. Hey, why do at the bottom of it, the stories are entertainment. You read the book because you want to enjoy it. I mean, yeah, you do read things that are nonfiction or heavy reading and whatever, but when I want to relax, I don't want to relax with something that's hard to read.
Right.
So in editing, in everything we did, the emphasis has been on making it accessible, making it readable, making it easy. So that has been, and so uh, I, it's unfortunately, I mean, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of the publishing, but it's the economics of the publishing is
Hmm.
very uh, unfavorable to the writer and to the creator. Because from one hand, you can only price the book at so much. You can't sell the book for $30 because people won't buy it.
Right.
On the other hand, there's printing and there's a lot of pieces in the pipeline that makes it economically very difficult. But I mean, my aim is not to get rich. My aim is to make this accessible to people, and my aim is to start a conversation about
Mhm.
not only this book, not only about Iran, which I hope people do, talk about it, but also about the transitions, the transitions that we are seeing in our own life. Does this, if it doesn't resonate with people of this time, uh, then I felt, but I think it does. I think it does resonate with people because our time is kind of similar in that
Hmm.
sense.
Sure, sure. So the big question is, so now what's next? I mean, do you have ideas for other books? Is something else going to happen with these same characters? Because you said you had enough for two books. So is that
Yes,
what is that what book two
well,
is? It's
the
here's what happens the next day.
Well, the short term is that I'm editing the sequel,
Okay.
but I also have a story, another story that I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about a nonfiction again about transformation, and the nonfiction is sort of it's about keeping our agency in this time because that's the human agency and that kind of thing and that may end up as a series of essays or something like that. So I don't really know that part. But certainly the sequel to this is coming out. And I am also, kind of making the skeletons of of another book that's more of an American Iranian book. It's about a trip, and also all of them follow the same kind of, it's transition and transformation and how do we deal with that as people.
Okay. So as you're developing these new books, are you able to take the things that you learned writing the first one, especially as you said, focusing more on the story and the characters rather than on the background and the history? Are you able to implement that more into these new drafts? And also, does it make even though it's a big project, does it
Mhm.
feel like it's a little bit easier this time around?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. For one thing, I think I can edit myself a lot better.
Hmm.
So the first version, the first draft, or the second draft, the first draft is already written, but the second draft, before even I give it to my editor or my beta reader, is much smoother than the first one. Because I learned, okay, so how to, create this thing, how to create that thing, how to make it, how to throw away. And pruning is very important. I mean, I can't tell you how important it is. You have to write that piece that is going to be thrown away, and
Hmm.
it's okay. That's the only thing I learned. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I was a beginner. Now I'm going to be a sophomore. Now I'm no longer a freshman.
You're an experienced writer now.
I'm an experienced writer, yes, and I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. Again, it's not for the faint of heart, but
Oh, no, it is not.
I'm a student of the craft, and I enjoy learning. I mean, uh, you know,
And the important thing is that you enjoyed writing it. That
yes.
because that plays a key part because if you just felt like, oh, I got to sit down and write again today, then it's going to seem like work and then it's not enjoyable. Then you're less inclined to want to keep going.
Yes, but I don't. But even the days that I don't feel writing, I still write.
Hmm.
Or I do editing or I do something else because it's a discipline also. You just gotta, you can't wait for the muse to
Yeah.
visit. And again, that's another thing is that you have to take it seriously. And
Hmm.
I just hope that everybody who writes, I hope everybody writes, but I also hope that they don't take this um, as like a frivolous thing. And
Yeah. As the saying goes, this thing ain't going to write itself.
no, it's not, and it's not, and we have to be a craftsman as well,
Mm.
or a craftswoman in this case.
A
But
crafts person. There you go.
crafts,
Afarin, so where could people find out more about you? And you said you can find the book on Amazon and other book retailers. It's called Silenced Whispers. And where can people find out more?
okay, so there are a couple of things that they can do. They can go to the book's own and website, silencedwhispers.com. There's a site that has a lot of information and even a chapter that they can download. That's
Okay.
one way. They can go to my website. It's called afarin.net, www.afarin.net. Lots of information there. I am well represented on LinkedIn. I have a sort of like a blog essay-ish on Medium called The Counterview, and we are taking the Counterview to Substack so people can, write to me. They can send me an email, afarin@transstrategy.com. Or they can, book has its own email, by the way.
Okay.
We are very fabulous. It's called Silenced Whisper Book at gmail.com.
Oh,
So
wow.
you
Okay.
can. So
are you
my
on,
book has its
I,
own life now.
as it should, as it should. Are you on any social media platforms? Like, is there a Twitter address for you?
I'm not on Twitter, but I am
Okay.
on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, my first name. And the book doesn't have a Facebook page just yet, but we are building that. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Everybody can go on LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram. Twitter, I don't
That's
know.
o-
I mean,
that's
I
okay.
always,
That's
I
okay.
always
Not everybody wants to be part of Elon's conglomerate, so don't worry about it. Okay.
yes, that certainly is.
Now
But
that's another subject entirely.
for another day.
Exactly, exactly. So, Afarin Bellisario, thank you so much for being here today. This is a fascinating discussion. I'm so glad we got to talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and hopefully you'll have me a little later when the
When book two
second book
comes out.
called The Russian Road. So that is to be published early next year. So
Oh, fantastic. Well, good luck with
have
that.
me
Yeah.
over again,
Of
and we'll
course, of
talk about
course.
the Russian Road.
Sure, look forward to hearing about it. Again, Afarin Bellisario, her site is afarin.net, and the book's website is silencedwhispers.com. And the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and anywhere you can find books. Again, Afarin Bellisario, thank you so much for being here today. I am Paul Zeidman. You can check out my screenwriting blog, Maximum Z, at maximumz.blog. I'm also on Twitter at maximum_Z and on Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ. Yes, those are my initials. And also check out the Twitter account for this show at Podcast CWL, which of course stands for Creative Writing Life. She is Afarin. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.